I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Ooh. Do you know what that is, Bobby?
I do.
I do too. I hadn't seen many of them.
Is that the rare owl from the Dumb and Dumber movie?
I don't think so.
No, Dudley.
I tell you, the whole, I don't know much about Sandhill Cranes, so this is going to be real interesting.
Yeah, I have seen one flock of Sandhill Cranes around here. I followed them actually to a place now that Toxie actually owns down in the bottom. Followed them all the way there. Saw them come across the highway. I was like, I can't believe that. Followed them to the bottom. They went there and landed. I drove down in the bottom and looked at them with binoculars. Came back out, and there was a game warden sitting there. I said, dude, there's some Sandhill Cranes in there. He said, what do you think I'm doing here? And I was like, oh, okay. I said, I wasn't hunting. He said, I know what you were doing. I said, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting bird. So let me introduce our guest today. So we have over on the couch, made the trek all the way over here from Lubbock, Texas. We've got Dr. Blake Grisham.
Nice to be here.
Man, that might be the furthest somebody's ever traveled.
Well, could be.
Be.
I mean, he drove.
We appreciate y'all being here.
Yeah.
Texas Tech, right?
Yeah, Texas Tech from Lubbock, and it was about a 15-hour drive. No big deal. Seriously, when you work in the high plains, 5 hours is a normal drive.
That's like running to the store.
It is. The longest drive I have is actually capturing Sandhill Cranes in Oregon, and that's a 24-hour drive.
Oh, man, that's a clip.
That's difficult, and we have to do it because the explosives we use for the rocket nets, can't go on the plane and stuff. So I have to.
They don't like explosives on the plane.
No, you can't say bomb on the plane anymore.
Oh, what it is.
Yeah. Well, you're our first guy from Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm honored to be here. I've noticed the other guests and stuff, and I do have strong ties to the Southeast, but it's great to be here and we come all the way from Tech and Lubbock. It was a really nice drive, and
good.
Yeah.
It's great to have people in studio, no doubt.
I heard there was some cool hybrid oaks planted in and around the Tech campus. So one of these days I'm gonna get over there and walk around a lot.
Some quercus and
some quercus.
Yeah. So then, looking at the other end of the couch, we've got a young lady here. She got a big smile. She is from the South, Miss Courtenay Conring.
Conring.
Oh,
you messed it up.
You called it, yeah.
You even practiced it.
You
He's
did.
100%.
I think he did. I think he did it on purpose.
My glasses have broken. I can't wear my glasses.
Right, yeah.
His eyes and tongue are connected. So
In his defense, none of my name is spelled very easily to pronounce, so it is what it is.
It's
unique.
Conring.
It is unique.
Courtenay Conring. You got an extra E in your Courtney too.
Oh, yeah, it looks like Courtenay.
That's a
Yeah.
common.
Courtenay.
That's a common Courtney
fancy.
spelling. The
Yeah.
Courtney
Fancy.
that used to work at the nursery spelled like that.
Oh, that's right.
Nice.
It's
was smart.
fancy, is what it is.
Here's the funny thing is I got that name because my dad had a friend growing up that had a sister named Courtney, and it was spelled like that, and they said it was French. So, let me just tell you, a man from Texas marries a woman from Alabama, and they decide to name the little girl and spell it French. Real fancy.
I like it.
That's a pretty interesting thought right
Yeah,
there. But
right.
it reminds me of that ad for there's that language. What is it called? The language.
Babel?
No,
There's
my
another
wife.
one.
My
Rosetta
wife does
Stone.
that.
Rosetta
Yes,
Stone.
and it talks
That's
about
it.
he was an Iowa farm boy and she was a French model. And
He had to get the tapes.
something like that. Mac, you're laughing over there. That's Mac knows about the French people and all that lifestyle. Yeah. What is escargot, Mac?
I think it's snails.
It is. Have you ever even escargot?
Have I? I don't think I have. Have you? I'm sure Dudley has. He's
really,
fancy.
really good. I mean, you put enough garlic and butter on anything, it's good.
Yeah, not going there near that one. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a biologist in North Alabama, and I've been, I graduated from University of Georgia in 2013, And then from there, I went to Texas Tech to get my master's degree with Blake, and I was his first grad student. And so I was the first one on what kind of became known as the Intermountain West Sandhill Crane Project through Texas Tech. And now there's been a lot of other grad students through it, but I was the first one that came out and about and did it. And so got my master's there. I went to work for the state of Alabama not long after that in 2016. And I've been there ever since. And I've managed waterfowl habitat for the first 4 years. And then now I do mostly upland management.
You know, we've had several people from the state of Alabama that through the years on these podcasts. They're hiring some really smart young people.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. It's very impressive. Chuck Sykes is
Why
on
they
the
hire
ball.
you?
A lot of
He's something, ain't he?
Yeah, something.
a lot of
That's
hunters
a great
too
guy.
that are getting hired. You know,
That's really good to see.
You go to college these days, and there's a lot of folks in wildlife and fisheries and stuff that didn't really grow up with a lot of outdoor exposure. So it's very refreshing to see that.
Yeah, and in our department, I'll say this: I'm not speaking on behalf of the state of Alabama today. I'm here as an affiliate with Texas Tech and the Crane Project. But I'll just say that like our department is, I would say, majority of the people in our department hunt. And I
Great.
think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
That's
that is
huge.
yeah,
incredible. That is
even all the
huge.
way down to our support staff, all the way up to our director. So.
Good
That's
deal.
great.
It's good to hear.
That is good to hear.
Chuck
And
doing some recruiting, isn't he?
maybe she can give us a get out of jail free card. or
Not
something
you.
For us.
Not you.
The state of
You're
Alabama.
way over the line.
Okay.
I don't know about none of that now.
All right, let's get serious here. We have asked y'all here to talk about Sandhill Cranes, and recently we had a camera crew and go spend some time with you guys out there. And can y'all just kind of? I'm gonna look at you first, Blake. Can you kind of tell us what is this fascination with sand? We all are just like really interested in them, but we don't know that much about them.
Yeah, so Sandhill Cranes are relatively new to the public eye, at least in terms of hunting. It's one of the more recent species that we have allowed hunting in the United States, maybe 1980s or so. But the fascination is kind of multifaceted, and I can't really explain it all. And that's because I think when you see a bird that's 15 to 20 pounds, can live 35 to 40 years, and you hear these large migratory tracks from Mexico to the Arctic Circle, and even the variation in how they behave across the United States and their distribution. They're captivating. Like the call. They have these elaborate courtship displays where they dance and sing for their pair. They mate for life unless one of the pair members passes away. So it's hard to really place why we're all fascinated. I think we all have a different reason, but I think the underlying maybe thing is that creature that's alive, it doesn't kind of fit the bill.
It really doesn't.
Yeah,
It
of
really
what we would
doesn't.
expect to be a bird. And just that alone, even if you don't know what that feeling is, you're looking at like, that's cool. Like that, I haven't seen that. And I remember the first time I saw Sandhill Cranes. I was an undergrad at Arkansas State where I got my bachelor's degree, and we were driving over to Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee for an ornithology class. And I think it was actually one of the non-migratory populations. This was years ago, 2005. And we crossed the Mississippi River, and my professor said, "Hey, I've heard there were Sandhill Cranes foraging out here." It was February. Said, and sure enough, we got there and there was like 30 in the field. I was 21, that's 20 years ago. And just, I had that feeling. It's like, I've always been interested in birds, but when I saw that, I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Even more so than all of the other interests I have. And for someone else, it might be totally different, but I think it's that same kind of mysteriousness that gets us.
So Courtney, I've heard that like the Native Americans kind of this was a sacred bird to them. Do you know anything about that?
I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody necessarily in that aspect, but I just know that like it was an important bird for them culturally, and I think a lot of it has to do with obviously some of the bird is very charismatic. It's loud. It's a seasonal bird, and Native Americans are always, they're very in tune to seasonality of things. And I think too that they have all those elaborate courtship displays, and which are like essentially dances, and which dancing is a big part of like Native American culture. So I think there's a lot of different ties through that. And then too, of course, like there's plenty. Like we discussed this a little bit last night at dinner. It's like just because it was a sacred species doesn't mean it wasn't harvested. That bison were important. Like so many things were important to them that were a big part of their diet. And I could only imagine they have really great eyesight, so I'm not sure how great they were at harvesting sandhill cranes, but I would assume that in that large of numbers, they would probably it's probably a seasonal food source for them as well. So.
And Lenny, you like this. We're told they're delicious.
The ribeye in the sky is what I've always heard about.
They're fantastic.
Yeah,
They're fantastic.
They're right there with, I love fried turkey nuggets. That's probably my favorite game meat now.
Talking our language.
Yeah, so that, but I mean, it's right there with that and elk backstrap to me. And I'll say this, it's like to me, the texture, the size is probably more like a ribeye, but the texture is a little bit more of like a sirloin.
That's right, yeah.
And yeah, when I cook the breast, it's just on the grill like I would a steak, and I want it medium rare. It's delicious.
Y'all making me hungry.
Did y'all bring any?
No.
No, I could have. Didn't think about it, but
For if kids or someone who doesn't have her sophisticated French palate, I cook it the same way, but it's also really good deep fried. It's amazing for those who might be picky eaters. It's amazing.
Everything is good fried, Blake.
Oh, but I'm from Arkansas, I know. But duck, I love to hunt ducks. I hate to eat ducks. I always do, and it just doesn't taste as good as
You need to let me cook you some.
All right, I've heard a lot of people say that. It's not bad, but it's necessarily not my favorite. But sandhill crane kind of is my favorite bird to eat.
Oh wow!
And their legs aren't bad either. Like, I mean, I'm sure y'all probably eat turkey legs, or I'm assuming you do. You cook them down in a pressure cooker or a crock pot, and then you make enchiladas out of them or tacos. Like they'll shred down and just be like a dark, like a beef, pulled beef kind of.
Mm-hmm. My stomach is literally growling right now.
Yeah.
So are there birds in every flyway? Is that how they do the Atlantic flyway bird, or they migrate up and down, or what populations are we talking about?
So they're managed by the migratory bird offices, much like waterfowl, but the populations, the way they're managed, they don't specifically fall into those delineated flyways. Mm-hmm. So the way Fish and Wildlife Service manages the species in conjunction with the states are based on geographic distribution of the birds and where they both spend their winter and where they tend to migrate north to. And if you start, and the species, sandhill crane, is found across the United States. But as you go from east to west, it becomes different populations, management populations. And they're not tied to those specific flyways. So you have like the eastern population, and then you have non-migratory populations in Mississippi and Florida. And, and then when you hit kind of Texas and go west to the Pacific Ocean, those are all migratory populations. And starting in Texas, you have the mid-continent population, which is by far the largest, between 800,000 and 1.2 million birds.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Estimates in the 70s, counts were a little bit different, but there's sufficient evidence to suggest that that population is increasing, not exponentially but rapidly, and that's the one that also stages on the Platte River in Nebraska for 2 or 3 weeks, and then flies north. I had a sandhill crane project in Texas with one of my other students, and we put 45 satellite transmitters out. And we had to use satellite transmitters, not cell phone transmitters, because these birds nested in the Arctic Circle all the way from like Finland back to Russia, all the way around to Canada, and they would come back right to Texas. And then after that, you get into the Intermountain West populations. So you have the Rio Grande Valley population, and then the lower Colorado River.
Rocky Mountain population.
Rocky Mountain, thank you.
They go to the Rio Grande Valley.
That's right.
You got it.
That's why I brought her.
That's a lot.
And then you have the Central Valley population, and then the Pacific Coast. So they're managed by those. And hers was on the lower Colorado River Valley, her study. But one of the goals of all of this research, and even with our friends in Fish and Wildlife Service, Dr. Dan Collins, is those Intermountain West populations, the Rocky Mountain population, Central Valley, LCRVP, and we didn't know if they were constituted like one big population that just wintered in different areas, or if they were discrete as is. And I'm gonna let her go into detail about some of her stuff, but we've demonstrated that there's evidence that it's one big population.
Okay.
And one of my students now is about to graduate, but she's doing the genetic component to look at the macro satellites across that range. It's much cheaper than satellite transmitters. Satellite transmitters are more fun, but this is like the next step. And there's lots of reasons for that, but they're managed kind of differently than waterfowl, so to speak, with the flyways. And so
Interesting stuff. And then there's that stigma associated with them that, when I was a kid or, even a young adult, I just assumed they were like endangered and you could never shoot one. And,
Yeah.
That's what you saw in the news. And I think a lot of people still have that.
Yeah, well, like what other game bird looks like a crane? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about a turkey, you got quail, you got partridges, you got all your western grouse species. All of them kind of go into that, like, I guess it's galliforms, grouping. And then cranes are kind of on their island. They're not really a duck. They're not goose. So they look like one of the things you're always told, don't shoot that, in the duck blind. That's not one of the things you get to shoot. And so I think it is hard for people to kind of overcome that.
But, like y'all were saying, there's a population of them that's, what did you say, 1.8 million?
1.2 is kind of the higher end estimate.
But then there's some of these non-migrating populations that are critically endangered.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or just like
lower numbers. I don't think they're like officially considered. They might have special protections within states and stuff. But like the Mississippi population, like maybe the ones you saw, there's like maybe 100 or 200 individuals strong.
Right.
And that stigma of being endangered because there's not that many. And then some of the birds might be state endangered species, but the species itself, we manage it in those different populations. It's not listed as threatened or endangered.
Okay.
But the states, it's feds first, supremacy clause, and then states have those rules where they might be threatened or endangered within the state, which that says no harvest.
Sure.
So they sometimes that can carry over and pass word of mouth, like, hey, you can't shoot those birds; they're endangered. Sure. And just so I think that's a lot to do with it, because where you go in the United States really depends on, hey, I love to eat that bird versus we can't shoot those; they're endangered.
Right.
Yeah.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Moultrie has pioneered the game management category. Today, Moultrie is one of the best-selling brands of feeders and seeders in the world, and they continue to innovate with new technology that gamekeepers will rely on. Moultrie products are always field-tested and designed for hunters by hunters, combining forward-thinking innovation with time-tested practicality. Moultrie, first in feeders since 1979. All right, so guys, Moultrie is offering our listeners a 15% site-wide discount at MoultrieFeeders.com. Use code Mossy Oak with a capital M, Mossy Oak, at MoultrieFeeders.com and get that 15% discount.
Isn't there a national refuge in Mississippi in Gaucher or something for the Sandhill Cranes?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I mean, too, you got to think the thing they look most similar to that probably gets the most publicity is a whooping crane.
Yeah.
They don't look that much like them, but in comparison to other species, relatively speaking, they do.
Sure.
And then, everybody definitely don't shoot those. Those are endangered.
Yes, don't shoot those.
There's not many of those left.
But, no.
Like about 500 strong, I think, in the wild.
But here's the thing I like about whooping cranes most people don't know. It's a functioning biological population. There's only 500 or so, but looking back, to when we started reintroducing, there was only 20 or 30. And that was 60 or 70 years ago. That whooping cranes, like Sandhill cranes, live a really long time, if not longer. And you have a real biological population when you have birth, immigration, death, and immigration on those. And they winter at Aransas and they go north and they spend their summers there. But Aransas and some of these other areas, the population is growing, just relatively slow. So it has this stigma of being critically endangered. We've actually had a lot of success with whooping cranes.
That's great.
So 33 to 500, yeah. It's like one single event could, like a hurricane or something bad, or could potentially, like a late winter storm, could really hurt them on that. But given the management and the trajectory, that's one thing we don't do well in our field is celebrate our successes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we had 33, now we have 500. We need to protect them. But I always like to say that when we talk about whooping cranes, because you always have this, man, it's just maybe not worth saving them and all this. Like, this bird lives 50 years. Give us some time. We're doing great.
Why do they call them whooping? What do they do that's
just to make me mad because I can't get the pronunciation correct? I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Do they make a sound that sounds like somebody whooping?
It's whoop. I can't do it as well.
What? Try that again. That was...
No, that's an egg thing. I can't
Mac
do
wants
that
to try it.
Yeah.
Can you Google that, Mac, and see? Mac's our fact checker.
It sounds like their call.
Sand Hill, where does that come from?
That comes from, okay, I'm not going to get this right. There's something to do with, I think, the sand hills in Nebraska and probably where some fossils were found. I'm trying, it may be Florida, but these are all things from like way back in the back of my brain, but there is some kind of tie to that.
Did you study under Mike Chamberlain?
I did in my undergrad. So
did he not teach you this?
Yeah.
we need to fuss at Mike.
Yeah, right.
I studied under Mike too. He didn't teach me this either.
Yeah, so we can blame
That's
him
two
for
demerits
that.
for Mike.
Yeah,
Mike,
right.
you have to call him on the carpet.
I guarantee you, 15 years ago when he hired me, and then a few years ago when he was her advisor, he never thought this would happen. So,
yeah, he wasn't worried about us.
yeah. So it's actually three demerits on that. So.
3 demerits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, bless his heart. He had to deal with me as an undergrad. So.
What you find, Mac?
I just have a question. So when we were talking about this TV show yesterday on our Monday meeting, there was a debate on whether the Sandhill crane is considered waterfowl or a wading bird. And I was hoping that y'all could settle that argument.
Yeah, it's a wading bird. It's not going to be a waterfowl because waterfowl is going to be webbed feet. Cranes don't have webbed feet. So they're not a swan, a goose, or a duck.
They're classified as a webless migratory bird.
Yeah.
They're in family Gruidae, which is a water bird, a wading bird. So, and their toes aren't webbed, like she said, but they're managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under the Migratory Bird Office, but because they don't have webbed feet.
They're the webless.
But they seem to eat more like stuff that a mallard would eat compared to what a crane would eat.
Yeah.
Like they don't eat like fish and stuff out of the water, but they eat more grain and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're going to be feeding more in places where you would expect to see geese, like dry field goose hunting, dry field mallard hunting, like that kind of stuff. They're very granivorous, at least on their wintering ranges where we're seeing them during like hunting season. And then when they're up on their breeding ranges, they're in wet marshes usually is what they're using up there. So they will eat a little bit more of the crawfish, frogs.
Okay.
That type of stuff up there. But yeah, and truly, I mean, it's kind of like, I've heard people say this about turkeys, a turkey will eat anything that's slow enough for it to catch and small enough to fit in his mouth. There's plenty of documentation of cranes doing the same, but typically you're going to see them on grain fields during or I say grain, but like cut peanut fields, grain fields, even cotton fields. That's the type of stuff.
Okay.
Have y'all ever hunted them?
Oh, yeah. Sandhills?
Yeah. Tell me about that.
So I hunted. I don't hunt them as much now just because of time limitations and stuff. But when I was a grad student at Tech, 2008 to 12, I was almost obsessive hunting ducks and cranes as a grad student. Sandhill cranes is both my favorite species to hunt and my least favorite to hunt. Is because I'm not a good hunter and they're hard to kill. They are by far the most intelligent, diligent bird I have ever hunted. When I'm duck hunting or dove hunting, you can talk with your friends. You can, goof around. With cranes, you even make a minor mistake, they can see you. And most of my crane hunts, when we've had really good success, most of the time when we've limited out, each person gets 3 birds per day. Most of that harvest occurs, well before, within the legal limits of sunrise, but well before visual light. And once the sun is up and they can see, you're pretty much done for the day. It's hard.
Or do you set up just like you would waterfowl?
Yeah.
And you call?
Not so much.
Yeah.
So I would say, like with cranes, it's more important to be on the X than it is calling. So, and two, also having your decoys set up how you, like, to me, which being a crane biologist is probably a little bit different than people who would just think normal, but like you'd set up your decoys like duck hunting and a lot of other ways you'll do with that J or a U where it's open. Cranes, if you look at cranes in a field, they're not necessarily in that. They're kind of like speckled throughout in these family groups because that's what they do. The 2 parents and the chick or 2 chicks will hang out together. And so a lot of times when you set up your decoys, you will kind of have like a loose U or a loose V or whatever, but you'll have like a pair, like 3 birds here, 3 birds here, 3 birds here with little gaps in between. But yeah, we used to hide in Texas. I'm small, so it worked out easy for me, but you'd literally grab like a tumbleweed and hold a tumbleweed over your legs and a tumbleweed here, and then just be laying underneath it and pop up and shoot them like you would out of a layout blind. In Alabama.
In dry fields.
In dry fields,
Gotcha.
And then in Alabama, ain't got tumbleweeds in Alabama, so we use usually layout blinds in Alabama, and just like you would a dry field goose hunt.
Yeah. So the important thing is to visually conceal yourself. So the best hunters would get like ghillie suits and tumbleweeds, or even dig their blinds down into the ground.
You could just wear some bottomland.
Yeah.
You'd be good to go.
That's right. Yeah. Funny story. I had a hunt in Alabama a couple of years ago, and a guy wore some real like faded blades camo out, and we were hunting in a field that was like, it was a planted wheat field that also had like privet and stuff around it. So like he just shined golden out there, and all of us wearing bottomland were fine. Like we still kind of blended in. We're
you need
right,
to go
but,
over.
Yeah, we were like, you got to get gone. Like,
Yeah.
But
There's always
didn't you
that
leave
guy.
some at the truck?
yeah.
So
Right.
when they come into the field, and I'm just trying to think when you're laying there in that layout blind, this bird's got a long neck stretched out. Are you trying to shoot him in the neck? Are you trying to break his wing? What are you trying to do?
I'd say a head shot. Like you want that head and neck shot, because the thing is if you body shot a crane and it's got those wings and you don't break those wings, you're looking at a bird that can just glide forever and a day. And I mean, look like Mary Poppins floating through the sky, just coasting as far as you can, And then by that point, you can see them, especially if you're hunting on the high plains or anywhere where it's high visibility, but then you're walking a long way in open territory to go run them down.
So my father-in-law, 2012, he came out and visited us and took him out for a crane hunt, and we had some luck. And he shot one. He was using his 10 gauge. I use a 12 gauge to hunt cranes, 3.5 inch always.
Because they don't make 4s.
I mean, we messed up and we banned the punt guns. So a long time ago, lacy act, all that market hunting. No, and he body shot one with his 10 gauge. And I wrung its neck and I put it down in between us, and a few more come in. He's like, "You gonna kill that one?" And I'm like, "They're too far off." And he's like, "The one standing in between us." And it was the one he shot was standing back up. This was like an hour later. It laid there. I thought it was dead. Yeah. And it started running. And it snowed and iced the night before. And I have little legs as well. And this is when actually both of them worked. I chased that crane for 300 yards. And then when I went to go pull up and shoot, my gun was all frozen up.
Oh, no.
So I unlocked it. And my father, I could hear him laughing because I had to like undo the shell. I couldn't get it to shoot. The crane was all bowed up. I mean, I just had to get it and hit it in the head. Always go for the head on cranes, or you're going to be running 300 yards in a
little hand to hand.
Oh,
Lanny's are
they're spicy like that. So.
They get after you. So.
I could see a scenario where Lanny run across the field chasing a crane.
I'll run something down if I need to now.
Yeah.
What about dogs? Do y'all let retrievers bring them back? And I also hear that you have to be careful with the dogs.
The eyes. I don't. So my. Talking about dinner last night, I always said I'm just a little bit different to be noticeable within our field and just in general. My family actually raised champion boxers and bulldogs, world champions, and so I've always had like European boxers, which are great squirrel dogs and stuff, but never retrievers. And just because family tradition more than anything. But I've had a lot of friends who do bring their dogs, labs and other breeds to hunt crane. And the goggles, cranes, sandhill cranes have a nipping bill. Whooping cranes will actually stab because they're blue crabs. Sandhill cranes have more of a nip, and if they're around you and stuff, they'll nip. But anytime they feel threatened, that bill is still substantial, and that's the first thing they go for are the eyes in this general area. So when we're working with them in the field, eye protection and everything, and dogs with goggles.
Wow.
Sandhill cranes is something I would not take a novice dog out on. This is for the more experienced kind of dog that has a little bit of grit, because they can be feisty.
Yeah, I think it'd be fine to send a dog on one that you think's pretty well dead, but the ones that are still standing up, hissing and carrying on, unless the dog's wearing goggles and just got a whole lot of fight in them, I don't know that I'd be sending my dog on.
This is a big bird too.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the greater Sandhill Cranes, they can be 4.5, 5 feet tall. That's as tall as me.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, they ain't got much weight wise, but they're feisty.
Still looking at you eye to eye.
Yeah, exactly. And then you got the lessers that are which is mostly what the mid-continent population is. That's still a 3.5 foot tall bird. And like I said, they're mean. Like when we were trapping them out in Arizona, that's the first thing we did. You start wrestling them out from under the rocket net, and you're sitting there trying to get the bird out from under there, and that bird's just sitting there like a dang snake with its head held back, waiting. And as soon as you look up at it, it's ready to it's looking for your eyes.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty crazy.
So we get comments and stuff about the photos that we have when we're processing cranes, because rule number one with this species when it's in hand is you always control the neck, and the neck is huge, so we always hold it around the neck, but it looks like we're choking it, and in fact you're just barely holding on to it enough to let it know, hey, I'm going to push you away, because if you don't, the way you have to hold them, that bird is positioned to
get your eyeball
right here in the temple and the eyeball. And if you give them a split second to react, they're going to react.
How about that? Wow.
Couple of dudes.
Save the neck for me.
I tell you, there you go, Dudley. Dudley, he's going to get a good comment.
I had to do it. Sorry.
Y'all are making me want. I'd like to go shoot them sometime.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Lay in the blind. Like
The best place to hunt them is on the high plains of Texas in the winter. You kill 3 birds a day.
Well, I'm expecting an invite there.
Would you like to come hunt Sandhill Cranes on the southern high plains?
That's the only reason he has this podcast, is so he can get invited.
Can't blame him for that.
No. He's smart.
Let's talk about y'all's research. And what predicated all this? How did y'all get started researching on?
So I was a new hire at Texas Tech in 2013. And when most faculty are hired, we get kind of startup packages. They're investing in us with the idea that we get extramural dollars and return that investment. And that's the only time you have until you become like a full professor to do stuff that you're interested in, but may not have like extramural support. So I had money for grad students and projects and stuff, and I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into studying 1 or 2 species. And I was studying lesser prairie chickens out there for years. And Dr. Dan Collins with Fish and Wildlife Service, we all have these mutual connections, called me one day and said, hey, I have money for transmitters and a study on the lower Colorado River Valley population of sandhill cranes. And I said, that's great. I have money for a student. And what the goal of that project was, Courtney?
Well, at the time, it was to look at, if I remember correctly, there wasn't much research on the lower Colorado River Valley population of sandhill cranes. It was probably the least researched of the migratory population. So it was kind of getting some baseline information for that population to then compare to what they have. Relatively speaking, like the Rocky Mountain population, Central Valley was very well researched. This one in between was just like lacking. And then 2, they were looking at once upon a time as potential surrogate species for climate change, but that really wasn't something that wasn't a primary objective. The main was just to get some kind of ecological baseline for a relatively unknown population.
So for Courtney's thesis was kind of the start of all of this research, and it ended up being an investigation of like habitat selection on their winter termini, which is Sunny Bono National Wildlife Refuge and Cibola National Wildlife Refuge. So Courtney went with Dr. Collins to Arizona, I think you put out 18 transmitters there, and that's substantial for that population. And one reason I like bringing her on to all this is it's really hard for her to get a master's student to publish 1 or 2 papers. It's tough. She's published 6 out of this, so she has grit, and on habitat selection, migratory, their migratory behavior. There's different ways to migrate. Mm-hmm. What else have we published on habitat?
Home ranges. So we looked at the average home range size and home range fidelity. We talked about that a little bit last night at dinner, how it's pretty interesting that Sandhill Cranes will, or at least that population of them, have very strong wintering home range fidelity, meaning that like if you took a circle on a map and said this crane is here 95% of the time all winter long, the next year when that bird comes there, 80 to 95% of it is right back on that same, like it overlaps that much. And so you could compare that to some species. People talk about imprinting. There's just these places that these birds know works for them, and they come back to it every year.
Yep. So that was the start. And about a year and a half in, had interest from Fish and Wildlife Service, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and some other funding agencies to replicate that kind of study, but on the mid-continent population in Texas. So that population happened to winter, right in Lubbock. So I hired a PhD student for that, and we put 45 transmitters out at Muleshoe National Wildlife Refuge and a few other areas on the high plains with similar objectives for that mid-continent population. And at the same time, Dr. Collins and Dr. Scott Carlton had a project on the Rocky Mountain population where they deployed transmitters. So now, if you combine all of this, they have Dr. Collins kind of leading it. We have transmitters out from Texas all the way to Arizona. And about the same time, 2015, I got a call from one of my friends I went to grad school. Her name's Laura Navarrete. She's in Oregon. She was a wildlife biologist up there. She said, I have a colleague who has transmitters for our small population of greater sandhill cranes. And this is at Ladd Marsh where we did the filming for this. But she doesn't have like the rocket net training or permitting. You do. Would you be willing to visit with her and see what happens? And her name's Kathy Nowak, and I visited with Kathy. She was toward the end of her career. And I traveled up there, and we captured 3 or 4 on the refuge and put transmitters out. And then we started getting more money for that. And what it's led up to is if you start in Texas and go to California, we've tagged about 150 greater sandhill cranes from all these populations. And the research and the research objectives are multifaceted, not just for my own program, but also with Fish and Wildlife Service and all of the states. So what we actually do, and this is my favorite part of all this, is we have like a data clearinghouse with the Intermountain West joint venture. So we have like a third-party colleague that we send our data to, one, to have on file, but they're also publishing this information about how to manage the Western population using all of this data instead of just 1 or 2 small populations. So we've published some recent papers on how flooded ag fields help sustain migratory connectivity in the West, in these areas, desert areas that don't have that type of available wetlands anymore due to changes, and a few other large-scale type papers. But the research objective is kind of like what she said, is given the species we really didn't start harvesting in the 80s. I was talking with Dr. David Hokus, who's now at Kansas State, but he was in Dr. Collins' position before he was, and Dr. Hokus was my postdoc mentor, one of them, on the prairie chickens. And he said, I've always wanted to study sandhill cranes. He said, but there's never been interest or money. And that was a few years ago. And now we're 10 years into it. And we're still keeping this going by bringing on new students and stuff. But the sheer amount of research and stuff that's been published is impressive in my opinion in this, because everyone's been willing to share it, because everyone's kind of has that interest. And we all get along really well and have similar goals with, protecting the species, but we're also interested in creating harvest opportunities and all these other types of other activities and stuff. And so there's just been a huge success. And it's 2020, it's 10 years.
Yeah.
Almost to the day. Like, school starts at Tech tomorrow. So it's almost 10 years to the day when she started. And
Well, 11 because I started in 13.
13, that's right.
Fall of 13,
That's
caught
right.
the first birds in 14.
I'm at that age where I can't remember when I started my own job. So now, Kathy passed away last year, and I have one student finishing up in Oregon. I'm probably going to bring on one more to analyze the data that we did for filming. Like, what we don't know right now is the chicks. They have very high mortality rates. And it's before technology changed, we didn't really know like fine scale habitat or survival of chicks because the transmitters were too heavy. They didn't send enough data. But now we have these cell phone tower transmitters that we can program on the fly and collect 5-minute locations. So the next part of the study is really trying to understand how chicks use habitat. They're with their parents, but also they migrate with the parents the first few, and based on sex, depends on what happens next. And these transmitters not only collect the location every 5 minutes or whatever you want, the bird is long lived.
Yeah.
And some of these transmitters, we've collected 6 or 7 years of data from adults. And the goal now is put them out when they're young, hope they live, and let's see what happens until that transmitter dies. And it's going to give us, and we had a lot of success. So the research objective as a whole, conserve the species, find land management techniques to improve habitat for the species, look at harvest regulations, look at migratory connectivity. So it's maybe a little bit different than what you guys are used to on the podcast. And that's only because there's this kind of renewed interest in the species. And every once in a while you hit pay dirt, you hit the jackpot. That's what happened to me in 2013 with all this crane stuff. I got lucky. Dr. Collins called and asked and made it into this. So we have so many objectives, and it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and it's such a cool species that is all over the place. So,
Yeah.
It is a cool species.
So do mom and dad, mom and dad Sandhill Crane, they come together and how many, I always thought are they called colts? Is that what the chicks are referred to as colts? Do they have one or multiple, or what does their nesting look like?
They usually have 2 chicks, and it just depends on which population, like the survival rates. So like there's places that are like I think the Florida population, it's a non-migratory population. They have pretty good survival rates of both chicks. There's other populations where it's only down to 1. And it's kind of interesting. They're one of the species that there's actually a decent amount of documentation of sibyllicide in the chicks. Yeah. So we talked about them being a little spicy species earlier. When the chicks come out, the older one a lot of times will kill off the other one. So there's a pretty strong sibling rivalry there. But yeah, the colts will stay then. They'll raise it up. They'll migrate with it. And for like 9 or 10 months, the colt or colts stay with the parents until basically they join up in what's considered like the non-breeding birds of the group. So it's all the cranes that migrate together. They'll have all these youngins that aren't up to reproductive maturity yet, and they'll join up and create this non-breeding group, and those kind of hang out until they reach that, and then they'll do their pair bonding a couple years later. So.
And they pair bond for life, it sounds like. Yeah. Do they go through the ritual, dancing ritual every year?
It's more rigorous. The kind of upon courtship, they renew their vows, so to speak.
Yeah, interesting.
And one of my favorite publications that Courtney published was she quantified how they migrate, how her birds migrate from Arizona to like Oregon or Idaho. And if you think about what I said earlier with the mid-continent population flying from Texas to Nebraska, 800 miles or so, they'll stage for 2 or 3 weeks, let the snow melt up north, and then they'll fly, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 miles overnight. That's the lesser sandhill cranes, so a little bit smaller. Hers were greater, so they're large. Those birds could literally leave Arizona, southern Arizona, that night and be on their breeding ground the next day. They don't do that. They just piddle around, and they kind of have this hopscotch migratory pattern. And she quantified, based on the location data, where they were spending their time during these migratory pathways. They called them areas of importance, was there it? Yeah. And they're spread across the Intermountain West, but anecdotal evidence suggests this is where they're pair bonding. They're spending a lot of time there to forage and just lollygag, but also spend time with courtship and because other birds are there, and then they move north. So it's really interesting. And one of the other fascinations that I have with cranes is how it's one species, but there's subspecies. And there's all these different behaviors across all of them. They're a little bit different. And like she's saying with colts and whatnot, it's very rare to see two colts survive. And like this year with y'all's crew, we actually tagged 2 colts. They're still alive, of the same family. I haven't seen that in these populations in 15 years or so. So there's just so much we don't know. So everything is curiosity, and I think that when they're at these areas as they're migrating, that's when they kind of do their courtship and renewing their vows. But they spend a lot of time bonding.
So, as scientists, what's going on with a chick killing another chick? Called it sibling-icide? Sibyllicide. Man, if you're a parent and you come back to the nest and what have you
done? Yeah.
I mean, I think that animals are a lot different than we are in that they're going to survival of the fittest. And so, I can't interview a Sandhill Crane, but if I could, I feel like sometimes the parents are probably just like, yeah, that's the one that's most likely to pass on my genetics if it's going to outcompete its sibling. And I'm not saying that's for sure it, but I think that
I would think that'd have to be it.
Yeah, I agree, and I like her analogy here. I also think they're the species that you guys would probably have to spend a lot of time censoring with the language and stuff. They're very vocal. I mean, they call for everything, and with the chicks, best available information is every individual kind of out for itself and passing on genes, and they want to find a partner that can help them, and the chicks ultimately carry on. But it's also a strategy called bet hedging in population management. Insurance policy. I mean, nobody wants to be called an insurance policy, but if you have to and they both survive, great. If not, that one, and then you feed all the food to the bigger one, and you still have something there. Because on average, I think across these populations, correct me if I'm wrong here, Courtney, I think average chick survival in any year is like less than 6%. It's super low. All of them. So up on game birds like turkeys and stuff and grouse, if you get 35 to 40% population level chick survival, you have
that's huge.
Yeah, you have sustaining populations. Sandhill cranes, no, it's like 6 or.
So what's eating them?
Everything.
Just
I can't really speak on that. I'm not sure like what those survival rates are, but going back to like the colt, killing its sibling, cranes are very long-lived species that produce 1 or 2 colts every year. The reason in doing that, there's a lot of energy that goes into these individuals. Part of that is defending them. And so I think like with a colt, if you're going to have 1 of 2, the one that has a little more fight in them is going to last way longer, given these adults when we go to things that kill them. Like I watched when I was trying to capture Sandhill cranes, I watched a coyote come up to a flock of cranes, and none of them do anything other than just look at it. And then when the coyote came close, thought it was going to get a bite, like it thought it was going to be brave enough to do that, that crane just went like this and bowed them wings out, and then that coyote just backed back down. So like once they get grown, ain't much messing with them.
It takes about 60 days for them to get bulky too.
Yeah,
so they're super vulnerable, but once they're there,
that's how Lanny does me a lot sometimes.
I have to.
It's interesting,
I get it. I'm a small guy.
They live such a long life, and so with that 6% rate, the longevity of the lifetime
is important.
Yeah.
No, interesting.
And I think that's why they spend so much time pair bonding.
Yeah.
Is the parents need to communicate effectively and trust each other, because that chick or those chicks may be the only ones for another few years. And there's a billion different reasons why the nest may fail the next year. It's usually pure random bad luck. Sometimes it might be a drought or something like that. But, in population management, I think another reason we're fascinated with cranes is they're one of the few birds that we would consider like a K-selected species, like an elephant that lives a long time and, takes a long time to get sexually mature. And the trade-off is there's only so much energy available, so they put most of it into survival, and then some of it into reproduction. Like it's reversed for game birds. Put all of that into producing those chicks, reproduce, live hard and fast, and die in 3 years. That's kind of my thought on
So
those things.
if there's 100 chicks on the ground, 6 of them are going to make it
On average, yeah, and it's a range. Okay, the 6% is something I read years ago, and my memory's fading, but it's really, really low. It's 6 to 10%. It varies year to year. Sure. But yeah, it's exceptional, and the math you said is spot on.
Well, talk to us about how y'all catch them.
Go for it.
Okay. So what we did was, and this is pretty similar to how you would catch like turkeys or some of these other birds. You're gonna use corn. What we did is,
corn.
I mean,
Not in Texas,
corn.
they don't. We had to use a different method, but I'll get into that.
Yeah. So my cranes, anyway. On the first place we went to, it was a national wildlife refuge in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. It's follows along the Colorado River Valley or Colorado River. There's a bunch of row crop ag planted throughout there. They're standing corn. The guys, the refuge manager, would go cut strips of corn. And them cranes would be looking and eyeballing that corn already. There were cut strips of corn. So that kind of got them to the area. And then we would focus the corn in certain places, and the birds would go land out long and then march their way in to these spots. We'd have our rocket nets set up just kind of in one of the corn rows that were cut, and the cord running back either to a ditch, just some looking point from a distance. We'd leave a couple corn cob stobs up there to be kind of like, this is the sweet spot, as we called it, the place where the rocket net's going to land, and be watching with binoculars. And as soon as we can tell that they are in that sweet spot, we charge and fire the rocket nets. And the rocket nets have to be at a decently steep angle. You're talking about a pretty tall bird here. But after that, it's the processing of the animals, just like anything else under a rocket net. You go start detangling and put it in a burlap sack, stick a transmitter and band on it.
Yep.
Yeah. They are pretty wary. Like, this goes back to hunting them too. Their vision is like superb. And so if there's anything out of sorts with a rocket net, I learned this the hard way, that is something that they are not going to just like walk up to. They need to be accustomed to it. There's some species you can go roll it out and they're just like, whatever, and they'll walk right up to it, but not cranes. Cranes are pretty aware of their surroundings.
Yeah, so instead of flying in and landing on the X, they're actually landing outside the quote unquote spread, and then they are carefully
marching in.
Yeah.
And rocket nets aren't a reach out and grab them technique. They have to be, even wild turkeys, they have to be right there on that corn. And reiterate what she said about them being visual creatures. This is my favorite kind of hunting, quote unquote, is if I can get cranes to that corn and get them under the net, I consider that a trophy. It's hard. I mean, turkeys, depending on the eastern wild turkeys, can be hard to get under the net. Reels are dumb. I mean, they're easy. Like, I can teach a class of 30 students how to capture them in the summer without any camouflage for Rios. Cranes in a rocket net is kind of my favorite type of capture. And my favorite type of capture to bring students on is because you're allowed no mistakes at all.
Yeah, this is another testament to that. So we sat in a ditch in the desert waiting for these birds to march in, and we kept wondering, like, what. The first day we had a mishap with the net. One of the girls that were on the rocket net charger detonated it before the birds got close. So, I mean, they were gun shy. Talk about feeling gutted. It's just like, just think about. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that happened. But then after that, like, we noticed the birds would land long. And it's kind of like when you see birds working your spread and they flare. And we were like, what is going on? There is something they don't like. And so I just came out and I looked at the spread and I was like, okay, I can see the cord that is running from the rocket net out with the detonators and the rockets. I can see that cord going up and over these corn rows. And it was a brown cord. It wasn't like it was a lime green, yellow, like stand-up cord. It was a brown cord. And I was just like, I don't know. Let's follow what the corn row contours do. Let's put, a little bit of brush on top of it here, put it under the dirt here, and whatever. The next day, the birds came right in. Yeah. So it made me think that from an aerial view, they saw that line running straight back to where the detonators were, and that stood out to them. They didn't like it.
Yep. Comparison. One of my students brought me some new rocket net cord one day for turkeys, and all they had in the store in this small town was white cord that ran across a field. Mm-hmm. Didn't even bother the turkeys at all. Cranes, no, they're not going to do it. Mm-mm. They're an intelligent cunning and very diligent bird. And I think it has to do with that survival. Long lived, it's kind of ingrained, they're always on the lookout for something.
Sound like everybody's trying to kill you, including your sibling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to pay attention.
Well, how do y'all catch these colts?
By hand. The colts are pre-fledged, so they don't have their primary feathers developed to fly yet. And there's a point in their growth, we measure it in days, like 45 days post-hatch, when their legs are large enough and equal the size of the parents so they can wear the bands and the transmitters, and they're gaining weight so they can carry that, but they can't fly yet. You got about a 10 to 15 day window, and you just run them down. And the footage, and the reason that I was really excited everything went well on the filming is it's something that looks very easy from the outside looking in, but it's also you just run them down. You have to plan. There's lots of planning. How to run in, how many people to take. And basically, you get a big team, no less than 10 people, in my opinion. And you break them up into groups. You have spotters up somewhere high that can see. You have a group that is coming in from one direction with the intent to separate the parents. And then you have another group of, the fittest who are going to run that bird down. And the thing is, the colts, their only survival technique is they squat. So you have your spotters up looking at the last place they go down. You coordinate, you communicate, and the goal is to get the parent separated and to get the colt in hand without it running. You just want it to squat and grab it. And I've experienced it all. And in the filming, every single one squatted and grabbed them first time. So, in the IACUC and all the forms and permits, we just call it hand capture. You just go down and grab them by hand. The other technique we can use for adults, underwater noose lines. So like on the high plains, they wouldn't respond to corn for bait because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So there's saline lakes on the high plains, and a few of them have freshwater spring function. And my grad student just put out decoys on these springs and put these underwater noose lines that have like nylon cord and a bungee cord. And each one has like a little noose coming, and they're stepping around in the water. And this is mid-continent population, so she might have 7,000 or 8,000 cranes out there, and one of those is going to get their foot in, and then it's going to take off, and that bungee cord is strapped. So you'll see one jump really high in the air, and then it'll come back down, and then it starts to panic, and you just drive out and grab it real quick. The rest of them take off. So that's a newer technique. It's not really commonly used. Rocket nets are the go-to on the species.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The Furminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Furminator does the rest. Check it out at thefurminator.com.
Hey guys, Dudley from Gamekeepers here. I want to tell you about the all-new Gunner Dog Bowl. It's designed for home and built for travel. It's customizable, leak-resistant, light on weight, solid on durability, and rust-proof. Like other Gunner products, they're made in Nashville and designed for everywhere.
Nosler's known for their bullets, and now they're making suppressors. Nosler suppressors are made for hunting. Adding a Nosler suppressor to your rifle will make you a quieter, more accurate, and more effective hunter. Protect your hearing and disturb less game with a Nosler suppressor. The time to hunt quiet is now. Learn more at nosler.com.
I think there's a lot we need to ask you guys about when y'all have got the bird in your hand. What all kind of measurements and what are y'all looking at? Are you studying feathers? Or you weighing the bird, trying to get those kind of data points? What else going on?
I think that that's going to depend on the objectives of each study, each individual study. So like for mine, the most important thing was getting that satellite transmitter on the bird, and given the amount of time it took to get that on the bird, it was like that was one of the first things. Get it on the bird. We'll age them. So you're just trying to determine if they're a hatchier or an after hatchier bird. And then after that, we took a little bit of wing measurements, and we took some weight measurements. And then after that, we put a band on them and cut them loose. Now, Haley's project, you can go into that a little more. Y'all have different objectives than what mine was.
Yeah, but we still do all of those things. We put the transmitter on, put color bands and aluminum bands on. Always mark the bird first, and then for Haley's study with the genetic components, we were actually pulling some of the secondary feathers because you can do PCR analysis on some of the DNA in the quill. So we would pull the 8th secondary and run that for genetic analysis. But like morphologically, some of the measurements is measurement of the bill, wing cord, tarsus length, some of the basic ones.
And that's how you would like compare it to others in the, in a different population even?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's about the data clearinghouse and sharing, that adds value because we can compare those things. So yeah, we measure, or we weigh them and do all of the stuff, and pretty much consistent with what she was saying. But with the molecular technique, sometimes we'll take some biological material, so nothing more than a feather. I might draw some blood every once in a while. It's just an insurance policy. But Sandhill cranes are kind of like upland game birds with rocket netting. You just can't linger and just hang on to them forever in your hand. You got to get them in and get them out. Even though they have red breast tissue and stuff and not as susceptible, it's still stress. Yeah. Raptor biologists have it great. They can hold a hawk for 3 hours and it's fine. But with cranes, you got to prioritize, get them in, get them out, and going. So,
what is mom and dad when you release that colt? Is mom and dad standing off watching you, or does the colt go to mom and dad? Do they come to it, or
all of the above? And there's some great footage of the first one we caught for the television show. The parents were circling nonstop. Just imagine us right here working the bird. There's 2 20-pound birds circling like 15 feet overhead. Normally, they'll be really close by. Sometimes they don't even leave the ground. They just stand 50 yards away and scream their heads off. The colts stay quiet. They don't want to say anything.
Right.
And what happens is parents come back and find the chicks. They're on the chicks within 2 hours at the most. And we always go back and check. And we have this GSM data and stuff that allow us to do it remotely. But when we're in the field with the colts, we always go back to make sure with their parents on day one, it's always within the first hour. They are always right there.
They have this was something, we kind of got distracted talking about Colin with hunting earlier, but they have over 20 different documented vocalizations, and the one that they're doing when the colt's on the ground is like a distressed alarm call, and they're just sitting there circling in that same repeated sound over and over. And I'm sure it's just to let the colt know hey, we're still here, we're still just if you're going to be around, we're going to be here screaming for you.
We're going to stab her when we get a chance.
Oh yeah, they're coming for you.
Yeah,
they're very good parents.
They are.
Some birds aren't good parents. They just get lucky. Cranes are amazing parents.
Yeah.
And of all the birds we've captured as colts, we've never had parents abandon the chick on this. They're right back on it.
Mm-hmm.
Lenny, you got a question?
Yeah, I was reading here, and it says that there's 6 subspecies of sandhill cranes. Are they? And is that?
Okay, so
I thought there was 3, but I'm gonna let her chime in, and I might be wrong. It's been a while.
This could be wrong too because it's been a while for me. But I think they consider the 3 non-migratory populations as their own subspecies.
Okay.
So you've got Florida, Cuban, and Mississippi are your non-migratory populations, and because they're isolated and they don't, Florida kind of overlaps with the eastern population, but for the most part they're their own isolated non-migratory ones, so those are considered their own subspecies if I'm not mistaken. And then you had, once upon a time, you had lessers, intermediate or Canadian, and then greater sandhill cranes. From what I've heard recently, they've kind of started dropping away from that intermediate bird and not really identifying it as its own subspecies. I'm not too into the lumpers and splitters arguments on that to know which one where they're leaning. But
Are they morphologically different?
Yes.
Okay.
The graders and lessers are the migratory populations. I'm not sure.
On the non-migratory populations, I'm assuming if they're considering them as separate subspecies, there's probably some morphological difference in them. But even with the lessers versus graders, unless they're side by side, or you just spend a lot of time looking at them, you're not really going to know whether it's a lesser or grader. They look very similar. It's kind of like a lesser greater scalp. Unless you got them side by side, you're probably not going to.
Gotcha.
There are some morphological. Graders are larger, and their bills are longer, and angled differently. I mean, the size difference is a big thing, but it's hard even to have someone with that search image, if they're in a mixed flock, to pick them out.
Gotcha.
It can be difficult.
Yeah, and they do behave slightly differently. There's documentation of where the graders have a shorter distance from their roost sites to their feeding sites, so that makes them have smaller home ranges versus the lessers have greater distances. And we assume that's probably just the graders outcompete the lessers for they're kind of bigger and lazier, and they can kind of, if they want something, they can keep it close by or make the lessers work for it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was reading this document here too, and it said they were previously classified under the genus Grus, but were reclassified in 16 to Antigone. This isn't a question. I just thought it was really interesting. And Antigone is apparently a Greek mythological character, and Antigone means in the place of one's parents.
Yeah.
So it kind of
very fitting.
Very fitting for it. It's kind of
And taxonomy and naming is something I really don't keep a lot of track on. It's always changing all the time.
Yeah. It's frustrating.
It's frustrating.
Just before you publish a paper, you need to double check what the most recent name of it is, and then other than that,
and molecular techniques are making that even more convoluted.
Yeah, for sure.
And she said groupers and lumpers. There's individuals who place a lot of priority on which subspecies it is and based on management, and others don't. Like I'm one who considers the morphological differences based on like the equipment and stuff I need to buy for band size and knowing which subspecies constitutes, what proportion of each population. But beyond that, it's all kind of the same.
Same bird.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah. See that in the plant world a lot too.
Quercus smircus.
So every state you can't hunt these birds. It's kind of confusing to me because Alabama you can, and
in the north part of it.
Is there's a migratory population that's coming in that you guys can hunt?
Yeah.
But if I went over into Georgia, would I be able to hunt?
No.
And if I go to like South Carolina,
no.
And it seems like Tennessee's got an area that's like people travel from all over to go watch the Sandhill Cranes.
Hiawassee area. Yep.
So help me understand how come you can hunt them in some states and you can't in others.
So I'll just leave it kind of at this. It's a complex socio-economic, politico combination when it comes down to it.
What she said.
That's good enough.
Yeah, there's a lot. So you have cultures that really value, like we've discussed. You've got places that the tourism. So like, for instance, I'm pretty sure Nebraska is the only state in the mid-continent population flyway that does not hunt sandhill cranes. Why? Because they have the Platte River, and there's 1.2 million birds that'll show up over there in the springtime, and just as many birders from all over the world coming there to take photos of those birds up close, having people blast them. I'm not saying this is why Nebraska doesn't, but just looking at it from a business standpoint, you've got this many birders versus this many hunters.
Are you speaking for Nebraska?
I am not speaking for Nebraska. That is one state I ain't ever been to, so I am just going off of.
I mean, maybe they're kind of going to a concentrated area.
Well, there's a lot of birders. I mean, you could look at the economy, and there's a lot more birders than there are hunters.
It's very valuable. I mean, they do so much for conservation too, just from their advocacy work and the photographs. I mean, how many people don't know what a sandhill crane is until they see this gorgeous photo of thousands of cranes? Like they're advocating for the species in their own way.
Yeah. So the thing about Nebraska and the Platte River is between Grand Island and Kearney, where like they spend like 3 weeks there, and like the entire population is there, and this is like maybe a 60 or 70 mile stretch of river. I mean, and then at the same time you have waterfowl and everything else, and it's really good business sense. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that. And she said it, the way it works for migratory birds that cross international borders is the supremacy clause comes first, so the feds have the right to manage it, and they manage it the species similar with waterfowl is they have these working groups for states, and the feds meet to set these harvest regulations and stuff. And she said it best, it's convoluted based on where you're at, which population, which subspecies, the state status, and the best thing you can do is just check each state's harvest regulations. if you really want to learn where to hunt and not hunt, because we can't predict, what's going to happen next with allowing harvest in some states versus others, because these decisions are a little bit different for sandhill cranes compared to some other species, in my opinion, because of all of this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Complex.
Are there any areas, I may not should be asking this, but are there any areas where, like, for example, you go on a goose hunt, a dry land goose hunt in Canada, and you shoot mallards, is there a mixed bag opportunity here?
For sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially throughout like pretty much all the central population. So you're talking about
Geese and cranes and ducks,
and
maybe.
cranes and ducks. So like, I'm not biased. When I was hunting on the high plains, if it was an open season on a migratory bird, I was shooting at it. And so I'm not saying cranes typically do not. Geese are kind of loud and obnoxious. That's funny to say, given how loud and obnoxious cranes can be. But like, geese are a little bit loud and busy for cranes, so they're not exactly feeding together. But a lot of times they're eating the same stuff, so they will kind of come in and look. And so you are going to oftentimes get passing shots. Something to be careful of now is the lead shot deal. So in a lot of states, they do still allow you to shoot sandhill cranes with lead shot. That being said, that's starting to shift. And as good as I do, if you duck hunt, you don't have a lead shell in your bag when you're out there duck hunting.
Correct.
So like when I chose my ammunition to hunt them on the high plains, I steel shot all across the board, because if I wanted to shoot a green-winged teal or a pintail or whatever else flew by, I wanted to make sure I was legal to do so during crane season.
That's what I was going to say. I do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because for me, hunting cranes was fun, but at the same time, you had all these extra opportunities depending on where you're at for the day, waterfowl or geese. So I always carried steel shot.
And even in the states that allow you to shoot them with lead, they a lot of them, their public land doesn't. So like you'll have your refuge systems or your WMAs that are like no lead, steel or non-toxic shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of complicated. Rich, is there anything we need to be asking to help you with your production?
Well, y'all have hit on a lot of things there. I think we're doing pretty good. But one question I was just asking, thermoregulate, like turkey poults, they have an issue with that. What about colts?
Absolutely. They're same issue. They're very susceptible to thermoregulation issues and mortality from predation, 0 to like 14 days post-hatch. They're covered in down. They live in a wetland. The parents do similar. I saw Dr. Chamberlain's post this morning about the thermoregulation, but similar kind of growth pattern. They have the contour feathers on the body first, and then they start developing those wing feathers. The difference between cranes and turkeys, though, cranes are larger. So the feathers, primate feather can be that long. It's a lot of energy. So early on, the parents go to great lengths to make sure the chicks are thermoregulating, and it's a little bit different than, say, a turkey brooding over. The chicks actually right on the back of the adults, kind of like a saddle. I got a really good photo of it.
That's cool.
And they kind of bury themselves down in. So it's that first 14 days is really critical. So
I guess if they get wet, just like a down sleeping bag, it's worthless if it gets wet.
Yep, they'll just crawl right up into their parents' feathers and go to sleep. Yeah,
that was part of the issue with us trapping in Oregon this year. Is it was an early hatch of sandhill cranes. On top of that, they had a late snowstorm. And so you pair those things together, that exposure for the birds, and you also pile on the fact that it's mostly down. It was kind of tough sledding initially, finding colts to capture.
Yeah. So my colleague Justin called me early in April or May and said, "Hey, we got birds with chicks," and it was like May 1 or 2, maybe a little bit later, which is really early. He's like, "We need to get there in July to film." And he kept calling me and he said, "Man, we had a big snowstorm. There's no cranes left." And when we actually got there, what we were seeing was the colts that were like maybe 10 to 15 days younger than you can backdate, just missed that snowstorm. So the ones that arrived, the parents that arrived or nested a little bit later, actually got lucky this time.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were going to capture on the WMA where the study occurs, but we did last year and captured 7. This year we didn't. We captured 1. Justin and his team captured the last one after we left. The others we had to go outside. Because there wasn't a lot, and the thermal regulation with that snowstorm, 100%.
Interesting stuff.
Wow. Well, this has been fascinating.
Yeah, really
You guys
interesting.
really know your stuff.
She does.
It's cool to have something new to be
Yeah.
interested in. I feel like most of us know a good bit about ducks and deer and turkeys, and so this has been a good one to,
100%.
learn info about something we don't know a whole lot about.
Good.
No, Sandhill cranes are they've been one of my favorite species to study, but just because of the new feeling of that, but also getting in and getting to learn. And to the listener, yeah, this is convoluted, but the species and working with them is such a great joy that over time with us, I think it just becomes it's not a labor of love. It's just like we enjoy learning about it, and that convolutedness kind of goes away. But it is a jigsaw puzzle for those on the outside looking in terms of management, and
That'd be a labor of love.
Yeah.
Especially a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
That's a labor of love.
I'm thinking we've got several listeners right now that are thinking about going to college, and this would be a good field to go into. It's just fun, fascinating.
Absolutely.
It is interesting because we think about, wildlife management, the way we think about wildlife management. This one really doesn't play into that, the typical stuff that we're doing with deer and even waterfowl.
Yeah.
Is a very unique species.
Yeah. So the management and like on the ground management, there is on the ground management. There needs to be.
Yeah.
And it differs based on where you're at, like we said. But I agree with you in that, planting food plots or, bringing attractants and the kind of typical techniques we use to improve habitat or bring animals in for harvest and stuff is totally different for sandhill cranes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that for me is interesting as a scientist.
For sure.
Well, I've learned a lot here. That I didn't know that they were spread out all across the country. I've always I've noticed that you could hunt them some places and you couldn't hunt them others. I really didn't understand that. Y'all have kind of shined a light on that.
The best place to hunt them is in Texas by far, on the high plains. Yeah. And you have an invitation now. So
Excellent.
Well, Andy, we're going to have to do that. Matt, we're going to make a
go.
road trip. Dudley, we might even let you go.
I don't know.
I'm looking forward to it.
And I think like 80% of that mid-continent population, based on our estimates, winters on the high plains. Some go down south into Mexico and stuff. So you're talking 500,000 or 600,000 sandhill cranes on the high plains. I can be in my house in my backyard in Lubbock and see 60 fly over at any time.
It's nothing. I mean, it's so flat out there, far as the eye can see. So when the sun's coming up, the birds are kind of lazy. They don't come off the roost a lot of times until like official sunrise anyway. But when the birds all pick up, a lot of times they're all roosted together on one of these saline lakes, thousands and thousands of birds, and you'll hear them and they get real loud and then they all pick up and you can kind of see them. So it's like if you go hunting, even if you do not kill a sandhill crane that day, you're just in a bad spot if you don't see them. And you're going to see probably thousands in a morning of hunting, just sitting there laying in the layout barn looking on the horizon just because you can see them and hear them from so far.
Sounds like a win.
Yeah, it gives you that, you know how like when you're deer hunting, sometimes you're just like, there ain't a dang deer within 3 miles of this place. You don't have to worry about that sandhill crane hunting. They just might not be coming to your spread, but they're at least in the area.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I like that. If you don't see a crane in Texas while you're crane hunting, you're a bad hunter.
Yeah.
Is what I say. If you see a crane while you're crane hunting, you're just a normal hunter.
Yeah.
And those who kill them efficiently and effectively during the light have my respect because I'm a bad hunter and I just cannot. I'm not that talented enough to be still and bring them in and stuff when it's it's super bright. And part of it is I'm just fascinated with watching everything around me. I look around too much. I'm like a young dog.
You go
It's
there,
like, what is that? I was
his
like,
face just skylighting over there.
Do people ever get them mounted?
Y'all need one in here. That's about the only
Yeah,
thing y'all don't
you
have
can get them
in here.
mounted. Yeah, we Lead Marsh and stuff have a few mounted, and I've seen others mount them. Yeah, and they turn out to be pretty good mounts too. Now
They mount them flying or standing?
standing usually. Yeah, I mean wingspan is 6 foot, so it might be going all the way
I
up.
had to
It's kind of
move
like
Hercules out of the way and
I
put
don't
him
know
on.
about
Wow.
it's kind of like the elk mounts that are like mounted way down here in a very small room, and the antlers go all the way up. With cranes, their wingspan is it's you need some wall space if you're going to do them flying. So most of the ones that I've seen have been like on the ground type mounts.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, look, why don't we look, we always ask our guests a trivia question, so there's no reason you two would be any different.
That's
so
good. Yeah.
we've got a trivia picked out for you, and y'all can talk amongst yourselves to come up with this answer.
Okay.
And Lanny, I always say I like to pick a trivia question where somebody could learn something. And so this one's no different. I think tonight, guys, you'll be able to talk with your wives or wives with your husbands about this trivia question.
This must be a good one. You worked hard on this
I think
one,
it
didn't
is.
you?
I was surprised to learn this
Yeah.
one. So
Okay.
let's turn it over to
Did you write this one?
I did.
Okay.
Richie.
He loves his own work,
Yes, I am proud of my work.
Today's trivia is brought to you by Sheffield Financial. Fuel your gamekeeper projects with financing for power sports, outdoor power equipment, and trailers. Begin your next conservation adventure at SheffieldFinancial.com.
Yeah, so with Sheffield are some folks that we work with, and they sponsor this trivia. We're real proud of our relationship there. Courtney and Blake.
Yes, sir.
We're turning it over to Mac. And,
boy.
He's
In the house.
He's pretty good at this.
All right, so the winner this week who left us a review is Cindy Willingham.
We had a female listener.
Hey,
How
that's
about
two.
that? Yeah.
Your wife and her.
Well, there's been one other listener.
This one,
listen.
she's-
Oh, wait, there we
My
go.
chopped liver over here.
3.
Yeah. And my wife doesn't listen to her. I'd get in a lot more trouble from some of the things I say.
So the prize is Richie will come cut your grass 2 times.
How about
That's killer.
that?
Is that a
That's
prize or
awesome.
Richie. This will be good for you. Get
But-
you out.
Is he using the LS tractor?
I think there's some underlying comment to that, I guess, of why there's me cutting the grass. But anyway, my belt and my deck mower anyway is broken right now, so it might be a little bit before I get it.
He's going to try to take the LS again.
So
Here we go.
So what's the alternative prize there?
So if you don't need your grass cut, which you might not because it's been very
Really
dry, we'll send you a couple of the Mossy Oak Companions t-shirts.
Nice.
His and hers companion T-shirts for there. So Cindy left a nice review there. Maybe.
Yeah. All right. So the question is, so everybody loves the black and white pandas. And the question is, will there be any pandas in the United States at the end of 2024?
What kind of question is this?
This is really unusual now.
Yeah, I would say so. We're talking about cranes, aren't we?
Well, so cranes have bearings. Like you think about a crane.
I'm thinking about Kung Fu Panda now because there's a crane in there and a panda.
Yeah. So there's no connection between cranes and these panda bears.
Well, cranes are actually revered in the East.
Yeah.
Red crowned cranes.
Yeah.
And most of our crane species are Asian-based species.
Yeah.
But still unfair. Pandas?
Wasn't the kick in Karate Kid a crane kick?
Are y'all? Well, it
Isn't that
could have
right,
been.
Richie?
Yeah.
Well,
been.
pandas.
Somebody fact check me on that.
Y'all are biologists. I'm expecting y'all are paying attention to what's going on around.
They're
the
not
world.
panda biologists. I'm going to defend them.
Well, pandas are technically owned by the People's Republic of China. They only lease them out to zoos. So if there are going to be any here by 2024 or whatever, it has to be on lease from the government to an official zoo. And I haven't really heard of any coming, but that would, I think, be the only way it could happen.
You're on a good track here.
Whatever he said, he nailed it.
So I've recently learned that China, if there's a panda in the United States, it's on loan from China. The zoo doesn't own it. And if they have
That's what I brought you here for.
if a bear, if they have a cub, that cub still belongs to China.
Yes.
China has been recalling all their pandas. Yeah. And Mac will tell you, there's only a pair of them left.
They in Memphis?
No.
That's where I first saw them.
I
As
saw
a zoo when I
them.
was a kid.
They're in
yeah.
Atlanta. They're the last 2 in the United States. Would you read that, Mac?
Yeah, so I mean, there's 4 pandas at the zoo in Atlanta, and they're expected to be returned to China between October and December of this year.
Must be more of that political stuff.
So I read that biologists like yourselves are concerned that these panda bears are being sent back because they're saying, what if something happens over there to the pandas? There isn't the other populations to pull from.
And it's used as a diplomatic gift.
It is, yes.
And so, it's a trust and respect from China to the country, whether it be the United States or
Apparently
Russia.
that's diminishing.
Exactly.
And pandas are only located in one specific part of the country where bamboo and stuff is there. And actually there maybe, I don't know how long ago it was, 10, maybe 15 years, there was a huge earthquake in the area, which reignited some of these concerns about genetic bottlenecks but I'm a bird biologist. I haven't read literature on mammals in 15 years, so that's my best guess.
Well, you did good. You did good.
Yeah.
Y'all got it. So they'll get a companion shirt, Mac.
Or their grass cut by Richie. Whichever one.
That'd be a long way to go to get
Yeah,
it.
right. Yeah.
Well, so
Do you
I just
weed
thought.
eat too? Okay, good.
I can't imagine he does. I didn't know that about the pandas. I just thought that was pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
Yes.
And concerning biologists concerned, I have no idea. It makes sense that it would cause some concern to have them in one place, given it's a kind of a small population and a mega charismatic vertebrate and basically a symbol of the People's Republic of China. I do not represent the People's Republic of China.
Are you speaking for
I am
China?
not speaking on behalf of the People's
All
Republic
right,
of China. My tenure only goes so far on some of these things.
So what else should we be asking y'all? Is there anything else that you thought, man, I want to make sure I point this out about these sandhills? This is your chance. It's a big question. Well, I think we learned a lot. So,
Yeah, we did. Very intriguing species.
Yeah, Texas Tech should be really proud of you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I tell you, it sounds like the state of Alabama, although you're not speaking for them.
They should be proud of you,
They've
too.
got a
I
great,
appreciate it.
They've
Yeah,
got a
that's
great
exactly
biologist
right.
over there. Y'all are very impressive what y'all learned. And
Am I speaking for Mossy Oak when I'm
No,
talking into
you
this
are not.
mic?
Absolutely not.
All right, just wondering.
The only thing we didn't talk about was what everybody's spirit animal was. I don't know if that's something you wanted to do, or if you wanted to wait till later. But.
What is your spirit?
What is your
animal?
spirit
And
animal?
what is a spirit animal?
Okay, so when you're at like these wildlife conferences, you're with people from all over the place, and you're trying to find common ground to talk to them about stuff. And one of the icebreakers a lot of times you do is, what's your spirit animal?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times this is somebody who's really spent a lot of time thinking about it because they're a wildlife person.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times also you're with amongst a bunch of friends, and they've been drinking, and they want to roast you, so they're going to tell you what your spirit animal is based
Should
on
be.
what it should be. You might have an idea of what it is, but they're going to tell you what it is. Mine is a raccoon. And as much as I hate dealing with them on a regular basis, they eat my turkey eggs, they eat my quail eggs, they do these things. I am very much a raccoon. And I'm a raccoon for several reasons. One, I think that it's pretty easy. You could catch me pretty easily with any kind of food. They're very, aggressive when it comes to their food and defending. I'm one of those greedy, aggressive eaters, so that's part of it. I'm pretty good with like tinkering with things. I'm also, I would say, a problem solver, and I think that like there's nothing you can coon-proof.
A raccoon can figure it out.
Other
Yeah,
than like
raccoon can figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of, unfortunately, I am a raccoon.
Well, what's the one that you should be then? That the others gave to you then? What's it all?
No,
raccoon?
they all gave me a raccoon.
So you win on that one.
I just wanted to be not a raccoon just because everybody hates raccoons in the wildlife field.
Like, what would you think yours is?
So when they do this, when they were filming, my students and the production crew and my colleagues I think they were giving each other spirit names. And one of the students who was there was one of my undergrads, 2010, who was on my crew when I was a PhD student. And he and I are good friends now, and he came down to help. And him and that crew years ago gave me the American Badger as my spirit animal. So I wasn't part of that conversation because I'm the boss. I was in bed, I didn't want to be part of that one. But I think it's an American Badger. They're short, squatty, close to the ground, got a little gray on them.
Spicy.
Spicy.
Tough as nails.
Yeah, and I carry that one with me because it's a badge of honor they gave me. It's like, you look at it, it's low to the ground. It's not like something totally scary like a grizzly bear, but you look at it and you're like, I'm not going to fight that thing. And that's what they told me. Now, I got one good leg. So that's mine, and I've carried that with me for a long time, and I really, really like that.
That's cool.
Because they're actually on my study area in Texas where my dissertation was. That's where I first saw them, so it's special in a lot of ways.
We'll have to give some thought to what our spirit animals are.
I know what yours is.
Yeah.
Weasel.
Yeah. I
meerkat.
was thinking you might be a sloth.
They call me the sloth.
That's it.
Have you guys given any thought to your spirit?
Lanny kind of looks he kind of reminds me of one of those cranes, you know.
I'm a crane.
So you can't give yourself a spirit
polar
animal.
bear, I
Someone
think.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, somebody's got to give mine.
So you have to bequeath each other, and you have to kind of accept it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And it's better if you have a real one, and then like one that's the lesser attributes, the ones you're not so proud of. You don't have to talk about those, but
Yeah.
you guys should come up with your spirit animals. I
Yeah.
think you guys can come up with some good ones.
Yeah, we'll have to give that some thought.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really interesting.
Very good.
And Mac, anybody else got another question on the subject matter? If not, I'm gonna go to some little housekeeping stuff we need to turn.
Oh, that's
base
right.
on.
We do have a little housekeeping to do today.
Yeah, so housekeeping, the first thing I want to point out is
Yes.
today is Mr. Fox's
94th birthday.
And
birthday,
happy
Mr. Fox.
birthday to
Happy
Horns
birthday,
going on.
Mr. Fox. Yeah.
Yeah. Great
Yeah.
man.
94 years old. Mac, what year would that have made him be born in?
1928.
How about that? Would you see how fast
Man
he
is
did
quick.
that?
Wow.
Year after the Great Flood.
Yeah. The Great Flood here in Mississippi? Mm-hmm. Yep, that was a great flood.
Did I hear you say you guys were in a drought? It's dry right now.
It's pretty dry.
She said I've been removed from the southeast for years. In Texas, when we have a drought, the soles of my shoes melt. So I was curious.
It's dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't melt shoes, but
No, the worst
don't
drought in
have shoes.
2011. I had data loggers on the ground and sand, and I had to call off my field season because our soles of our shoes were getting gummy. It was 70 degrees C, which is like 170 degrees.
Wow.
Ridiculous. Worst drought I've ever seen, but doesn't make the difference here less impactful. It's just interesting seeing driving around, not even realizing you're in a drought.
Yeah, we're dry right now. We are.
Yeah, I made the mistake of planting some trees on August 1st. That was one of the dumbest things I've ever done.
Wow. Yeah.
The tree guy.
But thankfully, Dudley's farm is 25 minutes away instead of 2 hours.
You can get some water to them.
Yeah,
there
I've
you
been
go.
wasting a lot of fuel and time watering those things.
So what's an animal that doesn't make good decisions but manages to survive? That's your spirit animal guy there.
Yeah, the ADHD animal.
Yeah.
So another piece of housekeeping, though, guys.
That was good.
Walmart now
Yeah.
has got the hotspot. If
Yeah, hot spots in it's got twice as many forage varieties and nutrition as other no-till products that are out there. And speaking of ribeye in the sky, the Gamekeeper butchery stuff is there too. So if you're looking into getting into to putting your stuff up, grinding meat, putting game processing is the best way to put it. A lot of affordable ways to get into it right there. So check out that 4-foot section at Walmart too.
I've really liked the vacuum seal. I mean, especially this time of year for gardens. I
Yes.
mean, everything kind of going into fall. I mean, it's perfect.
Yep.
I mean, it's super easy for your garden.
You got vacuum sealers, meat grinders, dehydrators, everything available now. So yeah, go check those out.
y'all got a Walmart in Lubbock.
We got 4
There you
actually.
go.
Yeah, so we're big time.
Y'all have a small mart? We've got a small mart.
We do not. So
We just got a Piggly Wiggly Ace Hardware. It's
Oh,
both.
man.
Whoa.
It's like Piggly Wiggly
High
slash
class.
Yeah, that's
Ace
right.
Hardware.
Yeah, she's over there in Colbert County, Alabama, and we've got some guests coming in a couple of weeks from Colbert County to talk to us about the Coondog Cemetery.
Nice. I actually manage one of the WMA that the Coondog Cemetery sits on.
Oh, really?
So yeah, we'll be having the Coondog Cemetery Festival on Labor Day. I'm sure they'll talk about it when they come over. But yeah, so
small world, eh?
what's that?
I have a coon dog.
I got a question.
Oh boy,
Amazingly enough, I don't know
Is
how
the,
I ended up
I've
with it.
had them. So.
Is
My
the
wife
s-
brought it home.
Is the spring at
Atta
the
girl.
is the spring at the Coondog Cemetery safe to drink out of?
I would say no. I don't know.
I guess that turned out okay, but
You've been
Yeah.
drinking out of it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about all that now.
Well, looking at you guys, okay, I'm looking at Dr. Blake Grisham. You're with Texas Tech.
Yes, sir.
You're just a vivacious young professor over there. It sounds like you got a lot of good things going on.
Vivacious.
Vivacious.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know. I
Kind of
sincerely
reminds
appreciate
me
that.
of a badger.
Yeah.
He does.
Appreciate that, gentlemen. I like you guys. I'm gonna stick around.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm just real impressed with what you've got going on. And then I'm looking at this the way
You're
you
going to get it
spell-
right this time.
Okay, here I go. Courtenay Conring.
That's it.
Boom.
You got it.
And you spell Courtney very fancy, I might add.
With an E, that's that French spelling.
Yeah, you know.
But you don't speak for the state of Alabama, but you have connections with the state of Alabama
Oh,
over,
yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
And what you've done is very impressive
Yeah,
as
it
well.
is.
Thank
and
you.
Your love for wildlife is apparent.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's
Lots of knowledge on that couch over there.
Yeah, well, definitely appreciate it.
Hopefully we can have y'all back.
I think the world's a better place for people like you that care about these things and are studying them and explaining them to others and helping us understand. And you're probably helping other people make decisions about these birds.
That's our main goal as scientists, is provide informed decision or informed information that's reliable for the best management of the species, in any species. That's my whole MO as a scientist. And beyond that, educating and being a teacher to both grad students and undergrads. Those are my priorities. So that's my laser focus on that. And thanks for having us. The thing I was worried most about Sandhill Cranes is they're convoluted, as you guys have learned. Yeah. But it's always nice to teach people about them, even despite that, because I think we all appreciate just the species in general for one reason or another, looking, eating, or anything. And it's one that has grown near and dear to our hearts. And
definitely,
and to keep a project going with different grad students, and we're going on year 10 and bringing on more, it's kind of a testament to that. Yeah. Like there's good buy-in from lots of different stakeholders to manage the species for one reason or another. And it's not my position to say birders or hunters, and I place some emphasis on hunters because conservation funding, but my job is to give them reliable information to make sure they continue, because I want someone else to enjoy cranes the way I have.
I think that's really important. Like, I feel really blessed to do what I do for a living. I get to do something I'm passionate about, something I've had an interest in ever since I was a child, as far back as I can remember, and something that I think that we probably all, as gamekeepers, biologists, whatever kind of conservationists you are, what you want to do at the end of the day is leave everything better than you found it.
100%.
And not only that, it's just like educate people every opportunity you get. You may not have a tractor to be able to go do habitat manage on somebody's property. You may not have the time for whatever reason, but do what you can with what you have where you are. And doing situations like this, coming on here talking about Sandhill Cranes, I don't know a ton of other people, like we've talked about, there's not a ton of podcasts out there getting spotlight on this species. And I hope, if nothing else, we've conveyed our love for the species in a genuine way that other people will see and hopefully pursue their own genuine love for it.
Well said.
It's added to my list for sure.
No doubt about it.
Very well said.
I didn't teach her that. That's her natural talent.
I can say that you've made one of them's going to get it. We're going to eat one sooner or later.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about that.
I wish I had known y'all hadn't eaten them, because I have one in the freezer and I could have brought it and cooked it up for y'all.
And now she says it.
Yeah.
I did bring y'all some pepper jelly. I need to remember. It's from my garden, so
I love pepper jelly. It's good on waterfowl.
I have no tangible skills, so I didn't bring pepper jelly. Like, what do you bring to the table? I can identify birds. I can do a lot of others, but actually, it's a good conversation starter. I make friends all the time, so I might have to. So I extend an invitation for you guys to actually come hunt cranes, and you can put pepper jelly on them or something.
That's awesome. Yeah. You know how to get us to show up.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank y'all. Mac, is there anything else? Richie, it looks like we're in good shape. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.